All right, folks, welcome back to a rescue and repair and recovery project. This is sort of what if. This is kind of what if, but it's also a what never was, a what was proposed. This is an interesting project. So what we have in front of us here is a very long ago built, I'm trying to remember how old this is. Let's talk about what it is, okay? What it is a Hasegawa F-16B with some modifications, with some extras. I know you're looking at it and you're saying there's some stuff there that doesn't look quite right. What we're representing here is a proposal that was made by the General Dynamics Company in 1978, I believe, or 9. I could be off a little bit. I'll have to check. But when the F-16 was first being developed, the F-4G Wild Weasel 5 was already, they were already thinking, like, what are we going to do in the future? This can't serve forever. And they knew that they were going to have to replace it with something. And the solution that they were thinking was, listen, this F-16 is going to replace everything. So it was a company-funded venture. And they said, let's see if we can get an F-16 that can actually do the role of the F-4G. And we know today we have the F-16 Block 5052 that we also know as the F-16CJ, which is actually an outdated term because now there's the F-16CM, which represents a consolidation of the F-16CG and CJ. In the capabilities, they're still different blocks, 4042 and 5052, but the CM includes modernization and upgrades that kind of bring joint capabilities to those two platforms. So it's a little confusing. But the F-16CJ would go on to be the Air Force's modern-day primary Wild Weasel seed platform. Long before that, there was this proposal which was basically, I want to say a mock-up, but you can't really say it's a mock-up because they actually modified an actual F-16B, one of the pre-production aircraft, and we know it was one of those actual pre-production aircraft because of the tail number that was in the pictures. And of course, and I say pictures, let me show you the actual pictures. There were actual pictures of this aircraft. There's not a lot out there, but there are actual pictures of this aircraft that exist that they did. And the tail number 50751 represents one of the original pre-production batch F-16s that was delivered for all kinds of testing and everything to the Air Force. And they took it and they said, we're gonna mock this up to show what a potential Wild Weasel might look like. And there were a few different loadouts they put in there. They made some, what were strictly mock-ups were the electronic warfare or electronic countermeasure pods on the wingtips instead of missile rails. Because, of course, it would have to put the electronic gear somewhere. Now, of course, with the modern-day Block 5052, the Wild Weasel, with modernization and micronization of a lot of electronics, they were able to fit a lot of black boxes in smaller places where they never would have been able to fit them in the 70s. But again, we're not talking about the Wild Weasel, we're talking about the actual mock-up they did. Now, this project was started years and years ago. I'm not even too sure of the begin date. I believe this was started before I even moved to Pennsylvania. So we are talking potentially at this point 5 or 6 years old. And it was started and not finished. And unfortunately, in moving and storage, it has suffered some damage and some wear and tear. And it being kind of old, it is not some of my most current skill level, some of my most best work. But, it is something that I'd really like to finish and something that I'd like to repair, restore, renew, and have join the ranks of other completed things. So I wanted to take a look at all the different elements that we have for it and kind of maybe do a video walking through the completion of this aircraft and see if we can bring it back to life. And so we have the canopy, which is going to be positioned open when it's all finished. These ECM pods, all scratch built stuff. Okay, so we've got them going. The paint job is reflective of the actual, if you take a look at the, like I said, pictures of the pre-production aircraft, I custom mixed up some paint. So here's the problem. We've got some like I said, this vertical stabilizer was broken, was bent a little bit. We're gonna have to do some creative touch-ups with the problems with the paint, because this isn't just out of the bottle paint. I actually mixed it up. Why I didn't just use something out of the bottle, I don't know. Wow, boy, am I kicking myself for that now. But yeah, this is you can see the shininess of the carrier film. I printed these. I printed the actual tail markings with the numbers myself on the printer, because nobody made that really. But all of these stenciling, this is all, I believe, Aeromaster F-16 stenciling. Okay, so legit F-16 stenciling. The way that an early F-16 would appear. Nothing special there. You can see the landing gear, have been broken more than once, and you can see some kind of crude, looks like a toothpick repair job there and everything. And I was estimated that this is just at this point beyond the scope of nice, decent repair to make it look good. So I ordered an actual white metal landing gear set from Scale Aircraft Conversions, and they make very good stuff. So one of the challenges of this repair is going to be to rip out all of the landing gear that's in there, and we're going to replace it with white metal, with pewter, and we're going to have to get it in there and make it look all nice and get the wheels on there and everything. This will also, like, the thing is, and if experienced modelers may tell you this, once you've broken a landing gear and you've fixed it and you've repaired, it's never as strong. It's never as strong as it was. It's the opposite of breaking a leg. If you break a leg and that or a bone, a long bone, that the place where it's broken is now the strongest point of that bone, where it's recalcified around it. It's the exact opposite with plastic broken landing gears. So we're gonna rip that out and we're gonna replace it with that. For the cockpit, I kind of fudged because I wanted to look special. It was just an original. The original mock-up was just an F-16B. But I decided, like, look, if, since it's half what if, half not, I ended up using the front office Edward photo etch from a regular old F-16A, and the back seat from an Israeli F-16 Sufa, just to be a little bit fancy. You know what? I don't know what I was thinking. Because like I said, we're modeling a real aircraft, but we're also modeling a proposal that never actually existed. So yes, the F-16B did exist. What we never saw was the electronics and the outfitting that they would have done for the Weasel, the Weapons Systems Officer, or the EWO, the Electronic Warfare Officer, whatever you want to call it, that would have sat in back. So I decided to just get the fanciest F-16 back seat I possibly could. And I put that in there. It is what it is at this point, but we've got that in there, so it looks very fancy. We've got a pair of seats that really could use like I said, a little bit of refurbishing, some aces too, and they need a little bit of finishing work too. But at least we got our seats there. And like I said, there's some repair work that needs to go on with the vertical stabilizer there. We've got weapons from Hasegawa. We've got a pair of AGM-45 Shrikes and AGM-78 standard arms. We've got the associated launch rails already built under the wings. Now, if I was building this today, I would not have, with what I know today and kind of how my I want to say skills or my experience has increased, I would not have mounted all of these hard points. I would have mounted the pylon, the rails to the pylons, but they would not be mounted to the wings yet. But they are all, ready to have completed weapons mounted to them when they're all done. We've got an ALQ-119 jamming pod, which, oh man, look at the heavy panel lining done on that. It's too late to go back. It's already done. What I could do is throw this thing away and get a brand new one. I might do that, actually. I'm very unhappy with the way it looks. Very unhappy with the way it looks, but it goes directly onto the under fuselage pylon. I think I'm going to throw it away. I'm going to throw it away. I have plenty. Jamming pods is not something I'm lacking in my accessories, so I'm probably just going to toss that and redo one nicely. Yeah. I mean, I love it. It's got all the markings and everything on it, but that panel lining is terrible. And then, of course, we have our 600-gallon drop tanks, which, with the way that the Hasegawa kit is done, the best way to do these, the absolute best way, is to mount them first to the pylons here, but because of the way they have these kind of plug-in tabs, it's to mount them and then give a little bit of putty on there and then sand it flush, because, you know, this is what this should represent. Is there's none of these blocks on there. It's just a fuel tank that bolts to the pylon, and then the pylon doesn't have these cutouts. This is just a way that Hasegawa gives you to line it up, but you should not have lines there. You shouldn't have any cutouts. So this is going to be a little bit more complicated to finish it off. But, you know, like I said, hindsight is 20/20, and as we do more, get more experience, and get better at the craft, at the hobby, you know, there are things that we do bigger, better, and faster as we move on. Whatever. I mean, one thing would be to slice everything away, but I'm not going to get that far into it. One of the things with the old Hasegawa F-16 kits, the wings have this droopy curve, which real F-16s do not droop that much. The wings don't curve down that much. And there are some things I could do to fix that. I could apply some heat and stuff like that, but it's at this point, with them already painted and everything, it's, I don't know, it's taking a risk. There are ways to fix that, but like I said, I don't want to risk ruining what we already have here. Obviously, this has broken off more than once, so we need to glue that back on. And these were actually, so these are old block. These are from the Block 5, Block 10 F-16s. If you were to compare these, I think I have one I can show you. If you compare these stabilators to what anything after a Block 10 looks like, they are much bigger. They are much bigger after the Block 10 for just increased performance. But if you're modeling a Block 10 or below F-16, you have these smaller stabilators. So I basically cut these from the Hasegawa kit, never took into account which block of the F-16B you're building, a very early one or a later production model. So these had to be cut to the right size. And, they are what they are. So that's kind of where we stand. I still have some landing gear door. Let's see what else we got on here. Well, we're not going to use these because we've got the struts, the gear struts, because we've got them in there. We've got the pitot tube, which we're going to need. We've got the landing gear door actuators. I'm not sure if we're going to use those or if they come in here as well. More actuators. Wow, this is really dusty too, huh? Main gear doors, stuff that goes again inside gear wells and all that stuff. So this is basically this is just landing gear door type stuff and pitot tube, and that's all that's left over on the sprue. So we've got repair work. Oh, and then I should somewhere in here. Do we have the big old actuator? If not, that's easy to find, because I don't often build F-16 two seats with the canopy up. There's a large actuator that we need, so I have the internal brace here, but there's a big old piston that goes behind there that lifts this up, and I'll look for it, and hopefully we'll have it, and if not, it's an easy thing to get our hands on. But we definitely need that to have an open canopy, which I want because we have all that nice detail in there. I just realized also we're going to have to either get some photo etch or just make some seat harnesses and everything. But I think this will be fun. I think this will be a fun project to finish off and something nice to have on the shelf and something very unique. This is not a version of the Viper that is very well known because it was never a production version. It was just a proposal. But obviously it was something that they thought like was a good idea, because the Viper did become the Air Force's one and only suppression of enemy air defense platforms. And we can talk, as we go through the repair, we can talk more about how we went from the original F-16A and B proposed platform through the early model Block 25 and Block 30 F-16C working hand in hand with the F-4G to the F-16 Block 50 CJ that we still have today out there doing the Wild Weasel mission. It's kind of an interesting series of steps, baby steps, to get from here to the actual, WW tailcode guys that we have today. They're not the only ones flying the Wild Weasel mission, but they have the tailcode, so we know they are. So this is just a little intro to let you guys know what project we're going to be working on. I think it's going to be some work to recondition this and get this guy back into shape, but I think it's going to be a fun process, and I hope that you'll enjoy going on the journey with me. We'll talk some, as I always do. I hope I can share some cool history. The Viper in my Air Force career, I have a real love-hate relationship with the F-16. There are people that absolutely, supremely love this airplane. As a ground controller guy, as a dude who had to rely on its loiter time, on its ability to haul, a loadout, and on the systems that are the way that the systems are required to be employed. I have some hate for the Viper. I'm not gonna lie, on the fact that it has to, when I declare a target to it, and the pilot has 15 seconds to correlate my target location, his bullseye, and his bearing, range, altitude, and aspect, and put those all together with a hostile declaration. And if he can't do that with his onboard systems, he's got to reach back down and, make another declaration request and have me go through the whole process again. And that might be speaking a foreign language to some of you folks, but there's a very, very specific, strict method to the madness before we actually allow a bomb off the rack or a missile off the rail. Modern day, like the Block 70 F-16s and the super upgraded, F-16 CMs are a far cry from the, Block 30s and earlier Block 40s and 50s. In terms of what they can do and what information they can process, and they can do it. But let me tell you, it was not a piece of cake getting a Viper on target and what we call targeted. When you're just a little dude on the ground trying to get sensor fusion and everything, and get the pilot that you're directing. I guess that's a whole nother video though. And by the way, mind you, when your little Viper has, from the moment it takes off, about 45 minutes of time before he either gets on the tanker or gets his plane back on the ground. But either way, whether he's on the tanker or going home, you don't have him overhead anymore. It's a lot. But that's not the poor little Viper's fault. I gotta remind myself, it's the idiots in the Air Force that took the basic concept of the Blitz fighter as the fighter mafia intended it and morphed it into this let's make it do absolutely everything platform. We'll talk more about the Viper history as we get into the project. I'm sure a lot of people know a lot about it, but there might be some details, some cool info I picked up during my time at Nellis that maybe I can throw in there for you. So please join me as we get going on this restoration project of this very unique one-off U.S. Air Force F-16B, and I hope to see you there. For all you out there building your own out in the world, keep building them, build them well, and I will see you again next time very shortly.